again by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani. Around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
And the fans want one. Score! On the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
My fucking table just attacked me. The fuck was that? I moved my elbow on my table. And I felt like something stabbed me. That's fucked up.
They're just preparing you for how this season's gonna go.
Yeah, that's what it's gonna be.
Yeah, just random
just
accident.
pain.
Yeah, pain. Exactly.
Pain.
So, we're back for us a double, because we just wrapped up the rest of our division previews with the Pacific Division.
Yeah, we didn't even explain what happened, did we?
Yeah, no, because we can explain it now, but I didn't want to explain it then because I wanted to see if anybody would catch on. But we recorded the first half of that. It was Atlantic, right? Atlantic Pacific, I think.
Yeah. Atlantic Pacific.
About a week ago, and then my internet cut out. It was like 12:30 in the morning for me, and it wouldn't come back on anytime soon. So I was like, we're ending it here. We're at Calgary, so we were like a third of the way into the division, and then we couldn't find a time to get on, and a week later we get back on, recorded the end of that, which still was an hour on the final five teams of the Pacific Division. I don't know how long that episode's going to be. It's going to be almost like 3 hours probably. It's two divisions, so that's fair.
Bro, I'm already in such a bad mood.
Well,
guess who had the highest expected goals for percentage on the Ducks last year?
Expected goals for I was going to say Vetrano, but
nope.
Brett Leeson?
Nope. Trevor Zegras, the guy who had a down year and is at danger of being traded because he's been underwhelming. Best expected goals for percentage.
I thought you were going to say you were in a bad mood because I told you what could be the worst case scenario on opening night is Celebrini pulling a Matthews.
You did. No, that also put me in a very bad mood. But that's almost guaranteed with our track record of going against players making their debut against us and scoring. So that is so tragic. It's fucking incredible.
Yeah, I love it.
Like, again, like I said to you once you told me that, Macklin Celebrini going full Matthews in the home opener is just absolutely their home opener, our season opener, is so fucking brutal that, like, I almost want it to happen now just because that's so funny. If it happens with Will Smith, it sucks. Will Smith having like a 10-point game or some horseshit is way less fun.
10-point game, jeez.
I was trying to think of, like, as a rookie, what would be insane, and it's like, a 10-point game is equal to a rookie putting up 4 goals. You did almost spit your shit out.
You could have said like a 5 or 6-point game, a 10-point game would just get hammered.
You did an actual spit take. That was
Will
really
Smith's
funny.
Second line center. So what are we losing, like 15-2?
No, we lose 10-9 and we dominate the Leo Carlsson Macklin Celebrini minutes. But Mason McTavish is beaten by Will Smith in a battle of we were drafted earlier but lower.
I'd rather lose 10-9 with Will Smith getting 10 points than to lose like 4-0 with Celebrini scoring all 4 goals.
Yeah,
because at least there's like we're scoring some goals. So
I planted my flag in the draft year that Oliver Moore is going to be better than Will Smith. So I am heavily invested in hating this poor kid.
Yeah, good. And he
has nothing to do with him, but him being on the Sharks has absolutely not helped the desire of my hateration. Obviously hopes he has a long, successful, and wonderful career and makes a lot of money and never wins a cup. But, yeah. So the Ducks, they were bad last year, except for Trevor Zegras and Jacob Silverberg, and Isaac Lundestrom, who were the only players to have a positive expected goals for percentage last season.
Frank Vetrano was historically bad last year with his 37 goals and 60 points.
I'm just saying, based on the numbers the nerds tell me are a big deal, expected goals for percentage. It's Zegras, Silverberg, Regenda in his 5 games, which doesn't count, and Isaac Lundestrom. Now, here's the thing I will say that's very exciting. 5th and 6th are tied at 49.9, and that's Leo Carlsson and Radko Gudas. Have we talked about Captain Radko? Let's start there, dude.
Haven't talked
Let's
about
start
Captain
there.
Radko, yeah.
Let's start with Captain Radko. How do you feel about Radko Gudas being the new captain for the Anaheim Ducks?
So I would say this. It was slightly spoiled by the way the Ducks marketed Radko Gudas in the offseason, in the sense that like you just knew it was coming because there was way too much Radko content. Like just for what we expected, like Radko Gudas and what type of player he was for the Ducks last year is like he was just still the kind of a guy on the team, right? Like there shouldn't have been as well.
I don't know
okay,
about that.
but like
That's
there shouldn't.
not fair.
They didn't market him like this last year, so you just felt like there was a push.
That's
for some
100%
reason.
fair,
Yeah.
but like I
So
thought
you
you were
knew
talking
it was
about in
coming.
terms of like on ice play, because on
No,
ice play he was not
very
just
good.
another
Yeah,
guy.
yeah,
He
no,
was.
he was good.
I would argue he was the best player on the team last season.
Yeah, he was very good, but I just mean like they spoiled it for us because I would have loved to just like been surprised out of nowhere. It still is a little surprising because we did expect them to maybe go the Troy Terry route or Cam Fowler, or to just say fuck it and give it to like Leo Carlsson or something. I do think this is probably the best move for like a transition to figure out who you want to be the next long-term captain. Because it's not, like, the long-term side of things, it's not going to be Radko Gudas. He's signed for the next 2 years. That's probably going to be it. Maybe he gets another extension beyond that, but at the very least, this is your captain for the next 2 years, which is perfectly fine because it gives you time to figure out, if you're going to keep guys like Terry and Zegras, and if one of them is going to be the option. We now know it's not going to be Cam Fowler because he's likely to be traded this season. And Cam Fowler still would have been probably the transitional captain just as much as Radko Gudas is, but it's almost better that Gudas gets it because you have a timeline on it. Realistically, the way I see it going is it probably ends up being Leo Carlsson or Troy Terry is the ones who end up getting the captaincy after Radko Gudas, and a lot of it just depends on Leo Carlsson's progression, I think, and whether they want to stick the captaincy on him. At the time, he'll be like 21. If they want to do that or not. But no, I think it's the perfect transition period. I think Radko's the right guy to put it on right now for where this team is. And he's got the experience and the track record and the success to be the right guy to be leading this team right now. Because you can't look at anybody else on this team and nobody's done it. Nobody's won it all other than Radko Gudas. So it's I think it's fair for the experience he has to give it to him and what he meant to this team last year. And everybody seems to love the guy too. So
Yeah. So I disagree about the media tour. I think it's cool that they kind of made a point
to be surprised, man. I wanted to be surprised.
Like, I honestly, dude, with the captaincy, I like that I'm not surprised.
Fair. No, it's fair.
I like that it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like Cutter Gauthier getting this year.
Dude, but that's what, you know what I mean? Like, even if it would have been Cam Fowler, right? Like, again, all the shit I talk, it makes sense. I can absolutely understand why that's the choice. I think it would have been premature for Terry. It would have been premature for McTavish, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is really interesting is a sign not only of where these young players are in their careers, but of there being new management. 2010-2011 was Ryan Getzlaf's first year as captain. That was also his 5th year in the league. So he was in the league for 4 years, maybe 5 years. Let me look. 05 was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so he was in the league for 5 years. My apologies. Before becoming a captain. This, to me, is like if they would have made Saku Koivu captain.
Yeah.
Instead of Ryan Getzlaf right away. And I think you can say that there are a couple of guys on this list, or on this team, sorry, that could become that, but nobody is that yet. And I think it's a very good thing not to rush anybody into anything, because I don't think anybody is served by it. I think giving this team a leader and a figurehead to build itself behind and to allow to try to be more influential in the way that this team operates and stuff like that, I don't know if it was Verbeek or Cronin, but one of them made a comment along the lines of hoping that giving him the captaincy will help empower Radko to be a little bit more vocal at times, right? Not asking him to change who he is, but asking him, but empowering him to be more vocal and to be more of a leader. Where, again, it was his first year on the team last year. He was a respected veteran and all that stuff, but it wasn't the same situation.
Yeah.
I really like this decision. I think it makes a lot of sense for everybody involved. I think there are a handful of names you could have put up instead. Really, one other name, in my opinion. I think the only real other choice would have been Cam Fowler.
Yeah.
And I believe I think I saw something that he maybe wasn't interested in being the captain, and knowing what we know now about him being open to moving, it makes a lot of sense. I don't think he would want to do that to the franchise. Because Cam is, above all else, a sweetheart. So I just think it works out for everybody. I think what it also means is that Radko Gudas is going to get an extension next summer when he's only got 1 year left on his deal, and it'll be a question of whether he signs a 1 year or a 2 year extension.
Yep.
But beyond that, I don't really think anything about it is surprising, which is good. And I don't really feel like there's any part of it that's open to legitimate criticism, right? I saw some bullshit about he's a plug or things like that, but as I said earlier, I think he was the best player on the team last year, and I think it is perfectly fine for a lot of people to not have paid attention to Anaheim last year. But I do think if you didn't, you don't understand what Radko meant to the team and how well he played. He was the most consistent player on that team last year, and I don't think that can be understated.
Yeah, the markets he's played in don't lend itself to being recognized for what you do on the ice necessarily, other than a few highlights here or there.
One time where he was somewhere that would have appreciated him and made him a star, and that's Philly, and he ended up moving on.
Yeah. Tampa, he was great. Florida, he was great. Anaheim last year, he was great. Doesn't get enough credit for his overall play defensively. Gets, again, the clips, the hits, the screaming in the goalie's face. He gets those clips get picked up, and people make their assumptions about the type of player that he is. And then don't dive into the actual stats and what he's done on the ice. So he doesn't get enough credit for how great of a shutdown defenseman he is and how good he was for Anaheim last year. So I'm all for it, man.
And I would argue that before that he was most famous to Anaheim fans for being on the other end of a BX's Superman punch.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Which maybe we'll see that. Maybe we'll see a Gudas Superman punch come up this year.
Now we're cooking. He might have to just to reach some of these other guys.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not the tallest guy.
All right, where do you want to start with this? Because we have a roster now. We have the 13 forwards, 8 defensemen, and 2 goaltenders that will start this season for the Ducks. How do you want to look at this? Do you want to start with the forward group? Do you want to start with the defensemen? Do you want to look at any major additions, subtractions from this team? What are you feeling?
I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
So over the last week or so, Ilya Lyubushkin did an interview with a Dallas Stars writer for, I believe, the Hockey Writers.
Yeah.
And in it, he talked about his experiences in Anaheim this year. Now, the most important part of this is he talked about how awesome Pavel Mintukov is, and that he thinks Pavel Mintukov is going to be a really good player in this league based on what he was as a rookie. And as Anaheim fans, that's the part that matters the most, is that Pavel rocks. However, he also in there talked about Greg Cronin, and he said he's a good guy and a good coach, but it seemed like he had some criticisms kind of about the way he was running practices, the way they were running the organization, some of the he talked about there being
40-minute meetings beforehand that had nothing to do with hockey.
what was the word he used to describe the locker room? Like psychologically heavy or something like that.
Yeah.
But basically talking about being a pretty shitty place because they were losing and they didn't want to be losing, and he didn't feel like Greg Cronin was making the situation better.
Yeah.
So I say all that because my question is this. Where are you on the Greg Cronin thing so far? What are your expectations heading into this season? What are you looking for? Where are you at on Greg Cronin as head coach of the Anaheim Ducks?
Two things with that. One, I don't have a lot of, and I never had a lot of optimism for Greg Cronin as a coach. I think of him the same way I think of Gudas as the captain, as he's the transitional coach for the Ducks. Into get them through this next period. I don't think he's a long-term head coach for this team. The other thing is listen, the Lyubushkin stuff. It's necessary to read it and to understand where he's coming from, but it also is one player's account. A player who moved on from the organization. There was a tough time. Just because this was a tough time for one player does not necessarily mean it's a tough time for all players. I know he has a mention in there talking about other players, and they all kind of, the way he kind of worded it was they all seemed to also dislike the same things he was, that he had a problem with. It doesn't necessarily mean that is the full representation of the entire locker room, so I do say take some of that with a grain of salt, because, again, this is a player who didn't have a great time in Anaheim. And ended up moving on. But yeah, I mean, I'm still at the same point with Greg Cronin. I mean, improvement is the Ducks just not being anywhere close to as bad as they were last year, and seeing improvement on an individual level from the young players on this team. I don't know what I expect from Greg Cronin. Right? I don't know what I expect to see from him. Again, we talked about this and what you expect from head coaches in this league, and there's a very few where the team is well coached, and that's going to contribute to on-ice success. It's less, it's a game that's less impacted or less visibly impacted by a coach and their tactics and their strategies and the way they manage their team, or less visibly able to pick out, right? So it's tough for me to say what do I expect from Greg Cronin this year. It's to just coach the team to a better record than they had last year, right? And a lot of that's on him and a lot of that's on the players, but I still, no matter what, do not think he is the long-term plan for this. I know the name's escaping me, and I hate that it is, because we talked about it heavily in depth, the coach they brought into San Diego that came over from Germany.
Yeah.
Why can't I
don't know. I want to say McIlvain, even though I know that's wrong.
No, it is. It is McIlvain, I'm pretty sure.
San Diego goals.
I still think that there was a succession plan in those hirings, because there were teams that were interviewing him for head coaching jobs, and he ends up coming to San Diego, and you bring in Greg Cronin to Anaheim, who was just kind of a different approach from what they had in Dallas Eakins, who was a player's coach.
Matt McIlvain, yeah.
Yeah, you bring kind of a hard-nosed guy in Greg Cronin, which I guess Pat Verbeek and the organization felt they needed, which I don't think is necessarily wrong, to go from one one end of the spectrum to the other in terms of what you had in Dallas Eakins to what you were expecting to get from Greg Cronin. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but again, long story short, I don't think he's the long-term plan for this team, and what I expect from him specifically is to just make sure this team is nowhere near as bad as they were last year.
I liked the group of guys, the locker room, but I didn't like that we were constantly losing. But of course, I was self-critical with myself. He also said that he lost his motivation during his time in Anaheim. It wasn't just because we weren't winning. There was a combination of factors. The coach, Greg Cronin, was very tough, and the psychological atmosphere within the team was very difficult. It wasn't that I wanted to quit hockey at that moment, but I did catch myself thinking, am I really tired of hockey already? It weighed heavily on me, but when I moved to Toronto, it all disappeared. Yada, yada, yada. The situation came from constantly losing. Even though the coach was a good guy, he always put enormous psychological pressure on the players. We had a schedule where we would come in, warm up, sit in a meeting for an hour, then hit the ice. I always thought, why are we warming up? Let's do it after the hour meeting. No, we can't do it that way. Then after 2 months, they changed it, agreeing, okay, let's do it your way. We come to these meetings, sit there for 40 minutes, listening to things unrelated to hockey. Then finally, we'd watch a video. You're listening, blah, blah. He's a good coach and a good person, but that was his approach. He'd walk into the locker room and see all the other guys with the same expressions on their faces as you. It was hard to find motivation. So, I don't think that is great. But I also don't think anything there is irreparable. Based on what Lyubushkin is saying, the atmosphere sucked and it came from losing, and I think it became from him being a veteran, right? If you want to look and try to point to a bias to maybe being predisposed to not enjoying it. Maybe what you say is Greg Cronin was brought in specifically to teach professional habits, instill a culture of two-way hockey, responsibility, mental toughness, dedication to these young players. Ilya Lyubushkin's been a veteran. He's played in the league for like 6 years now. He's fucking had it, right? He knows all this stuff. He has less time for it. So maybe that is a natural clash that happens between veteran and, coach who's brought in for the young players. Mm-hmm. I also think this is something that Cronin can grow from. It is something he can work on. I think he will now be more comfortable after having a year under his belt. We've already heard from training camps. A lot of the players say how much easier it is this year. You're not learning new people. You're not learning a new system. You're not learning new drills. It's things they've done already.
Well, he'll know he'll have learned what works and what doesn't work after a season
we hope,
like that as well, right? Or that's what you would hope.
But I think the situation overall, based on things that he can't control, is improved. Mm-hmm. Right? He's got experience and familiarity. They've got experience and familiarity. Now they find a middle. I said to you before this story even popped, I think Greg Cronin gets fired before the trade deadline. I don't know that I still think that. But I don't think it's completely out of the question. I am not sold on him as a coach. I understand the hiring. I like the hiring in a vacuum. I like what it is. I'm not sold he's the guy. If he's not the guy, this year is going to suck. Because the fundamental thing that you are looking for Anaheim is for 3 to 4 guys this year to all take a jump together. Mm-hmm. Leo needs to look better. He's looked great. I'm not saying that.
Well, he just needs a sophomore improvement. That's it.
He needs to be, a 60 to 65 point player next year.
Yep.
Trevor needs to show that he can grow and be a 70 point player. Terry, you would like to see him get back to 30 goals and 30 assists. Mason McTavish, can we get 25 goals and 60 points out of him? Pavel Mintukov, what is he? Cutter Gauthier is going to be a rookie, so I'm not even necessarily looking at him to make a big pop, right? I'm not necessarily looking for Luneau to make a big pop or Zellweger. Mintukov, you had all last year. I want to see you take a big step. Mm-hmm. Dostal, what does Dostal look like this year, right? He could very easily be one of those guys that takes a big step. If Greg Cronin isn't the guy, or even isn't a plus coach, right? Who's going to be here for another 2 years? What do you think are the likelihoods multiple players take a jump together, right?
Yeah.
Because what are they building off of to get there, other than themselves, which is not nothing, right? Mm-hmm. I understand that there are different theories about how important coaching is, but I think with young players it matters the most. What base do they have to spring from to grow? I wonder if Greg Cronin is the best guy to give them that base. I understand the approach and why he was chosen. I don't hate it. I like the idea of instilling structure while they're young. You know what I mean? And then allowing them to use that like fundamentals to grow and become these exciting, dynamic, creative players. But is he pulling it off? That's, I think, what this year is about for me.
Yeah.
Is is he making that happen? And which of these guys are going to take a big step?
Yeah, it's a pivotal year for Anaheim, and I think this transitions. Well, I might as well talk about the forward group. It's probably the most solidified and easy to predict thing at this point on this roster, other than goaltending, because we know Dossel's going to be the starter, and now Reimer getting claimed off waivers is going to be the backup until John Gibson gets back, and Calle Klang's going to be the starter in San Diego. But the forward group is set. We got 13 forwards as of today, with the roster being trimmed down. Ross Johnston likely seems like the spare guy. Maybe you could say it's Brett Leeson, but it's one of those guys, right? That's going to be the spare guy. But the top six is firm. It is as set as possible, and even the lines seem like they, just from what we've seen in preseason, seem set at least for opening night. Leo Carlsson and Cutter Gauthier have had excellent chemistry in preseason. They've been arguably the two best players for the Ducks, especially of the forward group. They're playing with Alex Killorn. That's going to be line one. Line two, I believe, is going to be McTavish, Zegras, Troy Terry, but they might, and I think they have shifted Troy Terry to the third line at times, so we'll see how that plays out. But if it is McTavish, Zegras, Terry, that means the third line is Strome, Vetrano, Fabry, and then the fourth line is some combination of Lindstrom, Brock McGinn, Ross Johnson, and Brett Leeson. I don't hate it, man. I am fairly optimistic because it is already better than last year, because adding a young dynamic player like Cutter Gauthier for an entire season does make this team better. It allows you to spread the depth out across the lineup. You do lose Adam Henrique, for sure, but again, you get, you're hoping for improvement from Leo Carlsson, Mason McTavish. Losing Adam Henrique means you have a 1-2 punch down the middle guaranteed of Carlsson McTavish now. It allows Ryan Strome to move to third line center. And then the wing depth, beyond Fabry, who I think is a great addition, you've got Gauthier and Zegras on the left, Killorn, Vetrano, Terry on the right, and then Fabry on the left. Like, that's not bad. And I know there's some bias in there, and we're hoping for young players to take steps forward, but there's a lot of combination of some good floor in Terry and Killorn and Vetrano and Fabry, and then the potential for kind of a boon in Zegras and Cutter Gauthier to kind of take this team to another level. So I am, and again, it's early season before we play any games, and we have this optimism every year, but I am excited and optimistic about the way this team looks like they can line up from game one.
I think so. Yeah, I think adding Fabry is nice. He's looked pretty good early in the season. But I think what makes this forward group exciting is two things. One, all the things that didn't go right last year.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did Carlsson have the good and correct and justifiable load management or whatever early on, but he did also get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And even then he looked good. Trevor Zegras got hurt, didn't look great, but he was hurt, and it was serious hurt, and in the games that he played, he did produce fairly well.
Yeah.
I think you can look at that and look at those players and say there is a lot of room to grow here, and there is excitement. But I think what makes those all fit in place is Cutter Gauthier.
Yeah.
Him coming out and having 12 shots in one preseason game
Mm-hmm.
is the most obvious, like almost unbelievable, this player is going to solve this problem.
Yeah.
Anaheim
a major problem
does not
that
have
we've
shooters.
had for a
Has
while.
not had shooters for a while, right?
Yeah.
We were hoping Raquel was going to be that guy. He was-ish, more of a 50-50 player, ultimately.
Vetrano's been the only solution for that.
Right.
Over
And
the
I
last
think
5 years.
yes, and remember how immediate it was with Vetrano that he popped off the ice because of how different he looked from everybody, right? Like, we were joking in his first year, he was shooting it the moment he crossed half line. Like, this is that, but with prospect brain upside, right? Because we can talk ourselves into, oh my God, Cutter Gauthier has a chance to, you know, uh, develop and blossom into a dark horse Rocket Richard candidate, every year, right? He's going to be in that mix. He makes the rest of the group look so good. And I think the thing I want to say is, one, that is a testament to Pat Verbeek and this scouting staff that they went out and made a deal for a player that was such an obvious fix. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way, where it's like, this dude does that thing that we've been looking for. Let's go get that dude, even if it costs us a good young player and what will likely be a good pick. Because this guy has the potential and blah, blah, blah. I just think Cutter Gauthier makes this team look better on paper in a way that I don't think we've had a prospect do in a minute.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
maybe you want to say Leo and Pavel Mintukov,
Yeah.
but I think the thing with me for them is I don't think anybody is when you draft that high in the draft, you're hoping for a number one center and a number one defenseman, right? Like, you're like, that's hopefully what we're getting here.
Yes.
With Gauthier, it was going out and bringing in a dude already, right? It wasn't it could be anything. It could even be a car. Or it could be anything. It could even be a boat from Family Guy.
Yeah.
It's how clear, it's really like, this puzzle piece is missing, and I found this piece, which is the obvious answer to it. Like, it just perfectly fits, right, to finish the puzzle. Mm-hmm. Leo Carlsson and Pavel Mintukov are special because they look like number one centers and number one defensemen, and every rebuild needs that. Cutter Gauthier is the perfect complementary piece for what this team needs and lacks in a way that I think is unique and very exciting.
Yeah, they also...
It's very rambling, I'm sorry.
No, but they're also coming in different situations, which I think makes this a little bit more exciting for Cutter Gauthier than Leo Carlsson and Pavel Mintukov. There was almost a little bit of an air of surprise in how quickly both Mintukov and Carlsson came in and stuck in the lineup, in a sense, where, like, they are talented enough players, but they didn't stick too much time down in San Diego, and they weren't... Mintukov was coming off of a good year in the OHL, and Carlsson was coming off a good year in Sweden, but it wasn't dominant, right? Like, we didn't expect them to come in and make an instant impact. It was,
sure,
if they can come in and do what they did, which was prove they can play at the NHL level, that's perfectly fine and ahead of schedule of where you kind of would have expected them to be. The fact that Mintukov played 60-plus games last year and Carlsson played 55 and would have played more without load management and the injury proves that, like, they've already established themselves as NHL players, and this season is where they take the step forward to establish themselves as good NHL players, right? Consistent NHL players. Cutter Gauthier is coming off a historic season in the NCAA. He is a former top 5 pick. He's got all the pedigree with him, plus that season where there's the hype that, like, this kid could jump in right away and have the instant, like, I am a very good NHL player type impact, right? Like, that's the different feel, I think, with Cutter Gauthier. That's what we've seen, and like you said, he fills that need. He's a guy, the chemistry he's developed with Leo Carlsson is perfect. Like, Cutter Gauthier is a pure goal scorer. He just finds himself in those positions. Like, 3 of his goals were just one-timers that he just kind of found open space in the slot, and Carlsson is a talented enough player where he just found him off creative plays, and it's just a one-timer into the back of the net for Cutter Gauthier. We're going to see that at least 10 to 15 times, I feel like, from Cutter Gauthier, just 5-on-5, the way he's able to create space and get open for himself. It's just exciting in that sense, and like, you think last year the only goal scorer that this team could credit themselves with having was Frank Vatrano, a shooter. You obviously adding Cutter Gauthier to that, and I think to some extent, like, Robbie Fabry's not a volume shooter, but he's always been a high percentage shooter. His career shooting percentage is like 14.6. He averages maybe like usually 1 3/4 to 2.1 shots per game. So again, not a high volume shooter, but he puts up 15, 16, 17, 18 goals consistently when he plays. It's a really good depth piece to add to this team that needs goal scoring. When you say, okay, Vatrano and Cutter Gauthier are going to be our main go-tos, but we can put Robbie Fabry out on a third line and know that he's going to go out there and get 15 to 20 goals for us, which replaces the goal scoring that you got from Adam Henrique and then you just get found value in whatever you can get from Cutter Gauthier, and that helps you that if, Frank Vetrano can't put up 37 again, that hopefully, he can do 30 and Cutter Gauthier can come in and mitigate some of that loss and help add to increase the goal scoring on this team. Leo Carlsson playing more than 55 games, McTavish not missing 18 games, Trevor Zegras playing more than 31 games. Like, that's all going to pay dividends for this team, even if they don't all play 82, just playing somewhere in that 60 to 70 range this year for them. That's going to make a difference for this team as well. So, I don't know, man. I like it because there's this nice level of finally that there's a consistent floor in some of these guys on a nightly basis, knowing what you're going to get from Troy Terry and Frank Vetrano and Ryan Strome and Alex Killorn and Robbie Fabry, and then having the potential for significant upside in Mason McTavish, Trevor Zegras, Leo Carlsson, and Cutter Gauthier, where these guys could all explode this year. They're all high draft picks. They all have pedigree. There's that nice mix of safeness and potential for some really fun hockey to watch.
So, I think the question I want to ask you is, we talked about the lines being seemingly set, with the main question remaining being Fabry and Terry, and do you swap them?
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, do you think it's a better... God, I don't know why I'm making this so complicated. What would you rather do, Eddie? God, I'm making this so complicated. I'm so rambly tonight. I'm so sorry, everybody. Eddie, would you rather play Terry with Zegras and McTavish, or would you rather have Terry with Strome and Vetrano?
Honestly, looking at it, just for pure depth and spreading out the lineup, I do kind of like Robbie Fabry playing with Mason McTavish and Trevor Zegras for what I just talked about, and having one of those shooters on each line. You've got the playmaker in Carlsson on one line, you've got Zegras on the other, and Troy Terry on the third line. You've got the shooter in Gauthier, Fabry, Vetrano. And then you've got kind of the workhorse, the guy who's going to do the dirty work and just contribute a little bit in all areas in Killorn, McTavish, and Strome. Like, there's just some consistency to the way you've built those lines, and each guy has a certain role on those lines, and obviously they can all contribute in different areas, but I like the structure of that maybe a little bit more, at least to just test it out that way against the Sharks. And then you have the freedom that if there are some games you want to stack it up a little bit, that you can move Troy Terry up to the second line and play with McTavish and Zegras, and then move Robbie Fabry down with Strome and Vetrano. And it's not, it's not a loss by any means, right? Like, you're not seeing a significant fall off in the talent level there. It just gives you some variety. But I think to start things off, I do actually like Fabry playing with McTavish and Zegras, and then giving Troy Terry some time with Strome and Vetrano. And we likely see a situation where it's not a significant split in minutes between lines 1, 2, and 3. It ends up being fairly close, where each of those lines are seeing 12, 13, 14 minutes on a nightly basis, and then the fourth line is probably just getting a little bit hammered in terms of not getting a ton of ice time, but I mean, it's fair with the talent in front of them.
Am I insane for wanting to switch Terry and Killorn and wanting to go
No, not
Cutter,
at all.
Carlsson, Terry on the top line?
Not at all, because that would be exceptional to see.
I think that would have the opportunity of being such a dominant top line.
I think
And
we
to
see it
then-
at some point, for sure.
Because and then you have, you still do Zegras, McTavish, and Fabry, and then you have Strome, Vetrano, and Killorn. Like,
Yeah, or you could
Those
even
are
play
good
Vetrano
lines.
with McTavish and Zegras and load it up that way, and have Fabry with Strome and Killorn.
Killorn, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a lot of flexibility for what you can do with this team, in the sense that even that, like, Killorn can play left or right wing. He's done that. Zegras can play in the middle or on either wing. Cutter Gauthier, if you really needed it, I don't think he's anywhere near like the next up option. Has played center in the past. Robbie Fabry can play left or right, and in a very tough pinch can play center. Vetrano can play on the left or right side. Strome's played center or right wing. The only guy who's kind of like set is like Troy Terry's going to be a right winger. Like that is
Right.
kind of set. McTavish, again, center and wing at times if you want to move things around or need and have the flexibility to do so. I think, again, Carlsson at center, Terry at right wing are probably the two set in stone guys.
I think
that are play
McTavish at
those
center is set. I think
I
it's
think so,
important
probably, yeah.
for Beak to have the physical presence at center in that top six like that. I think that matters to him a lot, and I think it matters to Cronin. And I don't mind it. I think that's the right way to go about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've always been in favor of shifting Zegras to the wing, and I think now if that's going to be the case, and you can run Carlsson, McTavish, Strome, and give Zegras a little bit less of the defensive responsibility of being a center, a full 70 to 80 game season of him playing the wing for the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this 260-point seasons he had with playing at center. I don't know. For me, I think we both, correct me if I'm wrong, we've always felt this way. It just opens up some more possibilities for Zegras to be more creative and kind of focus on what he does best. Not to say there shouldn't be a focus on him and what he has been doing in improving the defensive responsibility of his game, but this needs to be a season where Zegras can flourish offensively, and I think the best chance for him to do that is on the wing.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always felt like moving him to the wing isn't bad, right?
Yeah.
I think when you draft a center and they come into the league and they bounce between center and wing, people get antsy and think, oh, this guy isn't going to be a center.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't ever felt that he needed to be a center to be effective.
Nope.
There are different schools of thought on that, whatever. The thing I always liked about him as a winger is I've always liked his stick on the forecheck. I just think he has a very active stick. He's really, when he's engaged on the forecheck, I think he's a very disruptive player. And removing the responsibilities of being the center defensively and forcing him to sit back, allowing him to be aggressive on the forecheck, given his creativity, given his dynamic passing and his vision, creates a lot of opportunities. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Him on the wing has the opportunity to be Kucherov light.
Mm-hmm.
He's that good. I want nothing more than for him to put up 90 points this season.
Yeah.
More than anything else this season, a absolutely dominant Trevor Zegras season would make me happy. I want it so bad for that kid.
I want nothing more for him to stay in a Ducks uniform. Obviously, we both think that the trade rumors have been blown well out of proportion and him wanting to leave, and it's a lot of clickbait more than anything. But I would love nothing more for him to go out and prove all the doubters wrong and stick around in Anaheim for the time being, for as long as he can, and be a 70 to 90 point player on any given season, just because the pure talent that he has. So I don't know, man. Things are really shaping up. I like the look of the roster, like the fit of a lot of the players we've brought in. The pieces are starting to come together. Like finally, the thing we've been talking about for a long time is getting, the Ducks have had we've seen some of these guys go on, leave now, the Max Jones and so on, but we're looking for the top end talent to fill, the real guys who have superstar potential to fill at the top end of this lineup, and it now feels like those pieces are presumably in place. You've supplemented it with veterans, but then you've got, who could be potentially your top-line goal-scoring winger and Cutter Gauthier, your top-line center now, and Leo Carlsson. That allows McTavish to slide into what's a better role for him as a very good second-line two-way center. You've got Trevor Zegras, who could be your dynamic, skillful winger, and now you're supplementing that with guys like Carlsson, Terry, Strome, and Vetrano, who are very good top six NHL players on most teams, and if not, very good third-line players on pretty much any team across the league. So you're again, the homer, the bias, the optimism is there because we want to see them succeed. But you're looking at, like, if things go extremely well for this team, there's potential for them to take massive steps forward this year, and be just significantly better, at least offensively, than they were last year.
I think kind of my final thoughts about the forward group. I think that this team is in a very interesting place right now in its development, in its arc, in its rebuild, in its storyline. The last generation so clearly ended. There was the drop and the lull, and it has now all been about when will they start to pick up again moving forward. And it's about promise and growth and things like that, right? And improving and becoming contenders again and sustained success on the back of a next generation of great players. And I think this forward group really highlights that optimism and also provides an opportunity to highlight some of the cynicism. This is a very dangerous forward group because you can put out a lineup of 12 forwards, first, second, third, fourth line, and very clearly make an argument about every player in every position and why they belong there on a contending team. Cutter Gauthier, elite goal scoring winger, right? And there's reason to believe he can be a high end goal scorer. Leo Carlsson, high end elite two way, baby Barkov, yada yada yada. Mason McTavish, dominant, physical, two way, power forward type, 25 goals. Trevor Zegras, high end creative. You know what I mean? You can just go down the Ryan Strom, creative third line forward. Robbie Fabry and Frank Petrano, good scoring depth. And you can make the argument for why everybody fits where they're at. And none of it is a guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the part of this that is what makes it, I guess, dangerous from like a fan emotions perspective is the story and the narrative here for how this team gets better in 2 to 3 years is so clear. It is so clear. You can do it. You can tell yourself the story and you don't sound crazy. It doesn't sound like prospect brain. The reality is not all of them are going to hit. We've had enough now that haven't hit that maybe these are all the ones that do hit and we get that next group.
I mean, these are the blue chippers, though, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, like the
so
second overall, the fifth
now?
overall, the
exactly.
third overall. Like you've got Zegras, McTavish, Cutter Gauthier, Leo Carlsson, all top 10 picks. They should hit, and arguably, at the very least, McTavish is definitely an NHLer. Whether he's a 50, 60 point consistent player, that's the next step for him.
Right.
Trevor Zegras is an NHL player, and he has proven he can be a multiple times 60 point player at least. Now the next step for him is come back after a tough year, prove that you're at least that, if not more.
Right.
Leo Carlsson, Cutter Gauthier, we're still waiting to see what we see from Cutter Gauthier. Leo Carlsson proved last year he's at least an NHL player. They have the highest upside in terms of where they were drafted, 5th overall, and Carlsson was 3rd overall, or 2nd overall, sorry, on where they can go and what they can be. You hope Carlsson is the first line center. You hope Cutter Gauthier is at the very least a 30-30 every season type player.
Right.
Like that's what you hope. And then beyond that, you have all the pieces in place. The rest of the guys coming through, except for Beckett Seneca, are depth pieces, unless they surprise everybody and take significant steps forward. Like we're talking about the Colangelos, the Gauthiers, the Majatoviches, Sidorovs, Petras, those guys, Pastyuov, right? Like these are going to likely be depth players that could fill in, replace a Killorn, replace a Killorn, replace a Vetrano, a Strome. When those guys move on, Beckett Seneca is the only piece, and the best part of it is like all these guys should at least pan out and be regular NHL players. If one of them doesn't pan out, you have that kind of ace in the hole of Beckett Seneca who has the same potential as these players. That if you end up having to or needing or whatever moving on from a Trevor Zegras, you move on from a Troy Terry because of age, whatever the case ends up being, you have kind of that other piece there to move on from. So the Ducks are in, I think, a very good spot for where they are, is they have a lot of those good young depth pieces that could fill in and replace some of the veterans who are likely to go their way out. And you have the still one superstar level talent in Beckett Seneca that if something goes wrong or if you make a move to improve somewhere else with one of those guys in the top 6 currently, you've got him as a suitable player that could step in and fulfill that potential. So, yeah, I mean, it's all hope. It's all buying in on hope, for sure. There's a lot of risk in
But
things.
it's not irrational. And
No.
I think that is because it's very easy as a fan of a team to see the best possible outcomes as the likeliest outcomes.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. Prospect brain, our team's going to make the playoffs. Your team is dog shit. Yeah, but we're going to make the playoffs. Right? All that shit. This is not irrational to me.
Yeah.
There is a limit to what their ceiling is this year, right? I don't think anybody expects them to come out or I don't think anybody thinks they're really even capable of winning the Pacific Division, right? Nobody is looking at this and being like, that's where they're headed this year. What you're looking at is this could push for a playoff. This could sneak into a wild card in a perfect world, right? Wild card is the top 10% outcome of this season. And I think that's the exciting thing, but that's the dangerous thing. And it makes, I think, the situation with Greg Cronin so perilous. It's going to be real easy if this team, it doesn't look good, to go at him and go, why aren't you getting more out of this team? And that's not necessarily to say that's a fair criticism. We don't know yet, right? We'll see when we get there, if we get there. It's just, again, because the narrative around these players is so easy, it is really going to be put up or shut up for the next couple of years for Anaheim. Anaheim's got to know in the next 2 to 3 years if this is a real group of players. Yeah. And it seems like they could be, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we say this every year because things take steps forward and players get better and we add to this roster. But again, this is the most exciting lead into a season we've had in a very long time. And it's more exciting than last year because we've seen what Carlsson and Mintukov can be. We're hoping for a bounce back from Zegras. You're adding another debut from a dynamic young player in Cutter Gauthier. You've got a young blue line where you're seeing, Pavel Mintukov, Zellweger, Luneau all start, Lacombe all start with this team, supplemented by veterans in Gudas and Dumoulin. And then in net, now you're finally seeing the transition away from John Gibson to Lucas Dostal. So you've got youth and talented youth at every position that, in the most optimistic, best case scenarios of this team, it's a really young, fun team to watch that can be exciting. And if this team's pushing for a playoff, we're having the time of our lives. They might only win 35, 40 games, but we are loving every minute of it just because that means almost everything is going right for this team. Because listen, they scored 204 goals last year. If they're making a push for the playoffs, it means they're scoring 50 more goals this year at the very least, or getting significantly better defensively, or a combination and a mix of both. Which that means Cutter Gauthier at a bare minimum is a 20 goal scorer, probably 40 to 50 point guy. Leo Carlsson's a 40, 50 point guy. Zegras is getting back to 60, 70. McTavish is 25 goals, 50 points. That's bare minimum if we're pushing for a playoff spot. That's what these guys are likely doing, and they're all doing well. Mintukov's around that 30 to 40 point range on the blue line, and Luneau is sticking around, and Zellweger's playing well, right? Things are going well at a bare minimum to be pushing for a playoff spot. And then you sit here and you said, as fans, you think of the best case scenario is the most likely one. You think of there's potential for that to be even better if everything went best case, best possible scenario. Cutter Gauthier scores 30 goals as a rookie, and Leo Carlsson gets to 60, 70 points, and Zegras breaks the barrier and on his creativity and gets to 80, and McTavish is a 60-point player. Where do you think this team gets if McTavish is 25 and 60 points, and Carlson's 20 and 60 points, and Gauthier's 30-30 season, and Zegras is an 80-point player, and then the rest of the veterans are just kind of at least close to what they were last year? Where does this team land among the other teams we just reviewed for the Pacific Division, if that's the best case scenario for the Ducks?
So just looking at the forward group.
Yeah.
If this forward group hits in a serious way, this team makes the playoffs.
Yeah.
The pedigree is there, right? That there is a version of this team is 2.5, 3 lines deep and dynamic, and no one player stands out, but all 3 lines play well.
Mm-hmm.
And you basically just roll 3 lines momentum and which player is hot tonight into, fucking getting swept in the first round by the Oilers. But that's not out of the question.
Yeah. When we're talking forward groups, then, if all that goes well, we're talking arguably the second best offense in the division with Vancouver.
If every forward hits,
because you're not touching Edmonton. Like, we take Edmonton out of the equation because of Draisaitl and McDavid.
I think you're potentially looking at the deepest and most dynamic forward group since the back-to-back Lightning. Because if everybody hits, Troy Terry is still a 70-point player.
Yeah, I didn't.
Or
mention
a 60-point player with high-end defensive ability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if he's baby Mark Stone, and you're like, oh, we're playing baby Mark Stone with super volume shooter Vetrano and, middle of the road offensive creator Ryan Strome, you're in a really good spot. And then you're like, oh, and we've got a 75-point winger, right? And Zegras, maybe you're looking at like 550 assists on that. And then Leo Carlsson and Cutter Gauthier are the, super baby pair leading the charge. And Cutter's got 30 goals and Carlson's got 60 points. And like, you're looking at an incredible group. Like that is and that's the thing about it, is it's important to understand that's not likely.
No.
If it happens,
marginally possible.
I don't know what to say if it happens. Yeah. Again, I think you're looking at one of the best top 9s since that back-to-back team, which had Anthony Cirelli as their third-line center because they had Yanni Gourde still.
Yeah.
And Braden Point and Steven Stamkos. Like, again, you know what I mean? Like, so and Tyler Johnson and Andre Palat, like, those teams were scary.
I think a lot of people will be looking at this like, yeah, fucking right, that's not going to happen. But I think in that
I don't think that. I think that's
possibly true. Yeah, but
I don't think that's going to happen.
I will justify in the sense is like we're not coming out here and putting high hopes on players that I don't want to say it this way, but it's the only way that I can word it right now. Like that aren't justified or doesn't make sense to putting those expectations.
That's what I'm saying.
Players.
That's why this is so dangerous to me.
Max Jones, if he was here, is going to come out and be a 30-30 player as like a late first-round pick. Like,
right.
We're talking about a 5th overall pick who just had a historic college season, could score 30 goals in the NHL as a rookie. We're not the only ones saying that could be the best-case scenario for Cutter Gauthier. That's the best-case scenario for him. That is an unbelievable season. The chances of that happening are low, but it's not impossible because of the pedigree of the player. It's not impossible to say Leo Carlsson could come out and score 60 points. It's not likely, but it's not impossible. He has the talent to do so. He's had a good preseason. He's a 2nd overall pick. Those guys tend, and you hope, develop into those types of players, if not better. Trevor Zegras, the same thing. He has the pedigree. He's been a 60-point player. To say that he could get to 80 points isn't out of the realm of possibility because he's certainly talented enough to do so. He's in a bit more freedom on the wing. And to go from 60 to 80, it's not possible to say that Zegras can't do that because of the skill set he has. And we can run down the line with McTavish
not only that
whatever,
he has, but here's the other thing about a play, because that's, I think, a great point to highlight is you're looking at a couple of players taking big steps and one player taking a huge step. Mm-hmm. Because the gap between a 60-point player and an 80-point player is big. Yeah. But like you said, Zegras has the pedigree, but he also now has the context. The players around him are better, and the power play, God strike me down for even thinking about this, looked a little bit better to start the preseason. If you add a competent power play and better players all over the ice, the idea of how Zegras gets to that 80-point number isn't insane. Again, this is what I'm saying. This is why this forward group is so dangerous mentally for Ducks fans. It is so easy to talk yourself into this group being good and special and awesome. And it doesn't, you don't quite sound crazy, you just sound like a fan.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, you said it perfectly. None of the expectations that in this outcome that you're putting on the players is irrational. All of it fits the pedigree of where they were drafted and what the thought around them in that draft was. And all of them are early enough in their careers where the idea of them taking these jumps, right? Like you said, it's not like we're saying Isaac Lundestrom turns into a 60-point player. That's not going to happen. We're not saying Max Jones turns into a 30-goal scorer. It's nothing like that. It is these young first-round picks, high first-round picks, all go crazy in a way that totally makes sense.
Yeah, because presumably at some point the way they were projected is these guys are going to have some sort of breakout season at some point.
Right.
The unlikely part of this is that they all happen this year. That's the most unlikely situation.
That's a good way to put it.
It's not that Cutter Gauthier breaks out this next year, and Leo Carlsson breaks out this year, and Zegras has a rebound this year, and McTavish gets better next year. We're saying the unrealistic part is that they all do that this year, coupled with
you basically compress what you hope the next 2 to 3 years is into this year.
Yeah,
which is all these guys hitting that next level.
That's the unlikely part, but again, the optimistic really part of it, from what we've rambled on about for the last 20 minutes, is it's not impossible. It's not irrational because of the types of players we have. So, yeah, I mean, rounding out that whole conversation with the forward group, there's a lot of excitement about it. And the good thing is there is a solidified approach to, like, these are the 12 guys, or at least the top 9. These are the 9 guys that are going to be the top 9 forwards on this team for the entire season. There isn't a Beckett Seneca in the AHL that maybe could come in and disrupt things. You would hope that somebody's talented enough to maybe work their way into the conversation, but likely the guys coming up are going to be Sam Colangelo or Nathan Gauthier, and they're going to take fourth line minutes away maybe from Isaac Lundestrom or Brock McGinn or Ross Johnson or Brett Leeson. And that's perfectly fine. I think those are the types of players that you want to plug into that situation and see what they could do. And the nice thing is, if everybody stays healthy, you get this really good core top 9 that can develop chemistry across the entire season. There's no question marks. We're not talking about Max Jones playing on the top line anymore, or who's going to play here or whatever. You've got that core solid 9 guys that when everybody's healthy, barring form, whatever, those are going to be your top 9 guys. So I that's the thing I like about this group going into this year is there's no question marks. We're likely not going to have to send Cutter down to the AHL or something like that, right? Like, these are going to be the 9 guys we see for most of the season, and that's the one thing I'm most optimistic about, and something we really haven't had for a long time is that established group of 9 that we know are better than the rest.
We need to have a serious conversation about what we're calling Cutter Gauthier and Nathan Gauthier, because their names are spelled differently and you say them the same.
Yeah, I know.
It might just be Cutter and Gauthier, but
yeah, I think it's Gauthier for Cutter and it's Gauthier for Nathan, because it's like share. So Gauthier for Nathan, and Gauthier, like TA for Cutter. I'm assuming that is. I haven't taken French since grade 9. And
I hate you.
And you know what? That's just, both names have a French pronunciation.
We might just have to call him Cutter. He might just be Cutter.
I think he's always just gonna be Cutter, right? Like I don't see. He's one of those guys that's gonna stick around, and that first name is gonna be what carries him around for most of the time. I don't think anybody's ever gonna refer to him as Gauthier. What's another player that you refer to mostly by their first name? There's not many.
Timu was probably the last one I could think of.
Yeah. I'm thinking I'm trying to think of guys out there now.
Timu's like you don't like, people say Solani, but Timu works. He's one of the few athletes that I can think of off the top of my head that saying their first name is valid.
I'm trying to think across the league right now and see if there's nobody really comes to mind.
Sid.
Yeah. Sid.
And again, I'm not trying to say these are comparable players. I'm saying the names lend themselves to being first name.
You're mostly referring to them by their first name. Like I don't, maybe we'll be wrong, but down the road it doesn't really ever feel like we're gonna. Anybody who's either be Ducks broadcasters or Ducks fans are gonna refer to Cutter Gauthier as Gauthier instead. I think it's just gonna be Cutter. Like it just feels like he's gonna be Cutter when you're referring to him. So
yeah.
But all right, forward group done. Any last comments about the forward group before we move on? We hammered it, but for good reason.
I'm just really excited. I'm really, really excited to see what this group is and what they can do this year. Even if you want to say flashes,
Yeah.
There's so much to be excited about here for the next couple of years that it's a good spot to be in. It's really nice. It's really nice to feel this way about the forward group, which I haven't felt this good about the forward group in several years.
I also like that we can have fun watching this, and then also have fun watching Beckett Seneca absolutely torch the OHL this year, and just be also excited about both, which will be nice.
Yeah, that's very much the goal.
Okay, last thing on the forward group, because I want to ask this question: were you maybe disappointed he didn't get a game?
Who?
Beckett Seneca.
Yes.
Okay.
I 100% think. So I was texting you, I'm prepared to be irrational about this kid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you said, what is it? And I said, you said, like, how's he looked? And I said, he's looked fine. And you're like, oh, that's it? And I'm like, no. He is clearly not physically ready for this league. He is such a skinny kid, and he got pushed off the puck a couple of times. But from a skill and speed perspective, he looked fine. He clearly has the skill and the hockey IQ and the competitiveness to be an NHL player. I cannot wait for him to develop physically and fill out. He could be in the league as early as next year.
Yeah.
And I cannot. So I think it was like the early 90s. The Dodgers won Rookie of the Year back-to-back. It was Mike Piazza and somebody else, and I can't remember who. I think it was Raul Mondesi, but that might be wrong. But they had Rookie of the Year back-to-back. I would just absolutely kill for Cutter Seneca back-to-back Rookie of the Years. That would be so sick.
Yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
The possibility to make it happen.
Yeah, the harder shot, more for me, is Cutter doing it this year with the group he's going against versus Seneca next year. Not to be any detriment to the draft class. Actually, I think it's a great draft class. I don't know if there's a guy that I look at right now and I say he's going to jump in right away and really push and be.
Well, there's also a
mix.
The other thing is a number of, including Cutter, a number of the rookies are college rookies.
Mm-hmm.
So
or
the
level
we
talk like
you
Mintukov,
expect them to step into exactly.
Yeah.
The level of hockey you expect them to step into already isn't quite as big as the gap from juniors, obviously. So you're right. Like, not only is it Mintukov and Celebrini and Hudson and Cutter and Will Smith, all of those guys have recently played high-level hockey, either college or in the KHL. So, like, they shouldn't be as slow to pick it up. They don't have to be special in the way McDavid and Bedard are. That you're like, oh, that's going to be the rookie guy.
Yeah, I think Cutter's main competition are obviously Celebrini and Mintukov this year. And I think more Mintukov than Celebrini. I think Celebrini is an extremely talented player. I think he's going to need to be unbelievably special to do it with the team that he's on. He's going to have to put up 60, 70 points with that supporting cast. Is going to be very tough, I think, for him to do so. And I just don't know if he's that player long term. I think he's a great player. I don't know about the offense yet. Like, he'll still be, again, an NHL player and a very good NHL player. But to say 60, 70 points in his rookie year, I think is tough. Mintukov, however, is in a completely different situation where he's a little bit insulated in Philly. He's going to play top 6 minutes from the get-go with talented players, top power play with a much better top power play unit in Philly. And he's coming over from the second best professional league in the world, where he was, as a young player, exceptional in the KHL, which you just don't really ever see. He's the tough one for Cutter. I think the big competition. I would love to see a really close race between the two of them, because that would mean Cutter is absolutely popping off. Because I think Mintukov was tied for the highest score in preseason too. Like, that would be a fun race to watch, as those two they're going for the Calder to like the last couple of games. That'd be fun.
So I think the path to the Calder for Mintukov is he is top 3 on that team in scoring, and he is the rookie scoring leader, and they make a push for the wild card, right? Maybe even third in the division. They're in that 3-4 race for a while, and you're like, oh, they're right in it. Clearly, Mintukov and his offense, his dynamism is coming and been a huge help. For Celebrini, it's going to be, did he hit 50 points, and did he look like he might already be the best player on that team? If that's what he does, that's his path to being the Calder winner. Oh my God, I can want to say Selke because I was thinking of Seneca. For Cutter, it's goals. If Cutter leads rookies in goals, he will at least make the final 3.
Yeah,
because that is what he's being expected to do. And if he is the rookie leader in goals, he will make the final 3. Where it goes from there will depend on a number of other factors, but that's his path. Lane Hudson, same thing. Lane Hudson leads, all rookie defensemen in assists and is third in rookie scoring. There you go. That's how he gets in there.
He's got a tough path. They pay Mike Matheson a lot of money. He had a great year last year for him to take that job right off the bat.
But I don't think Martin St. Louis cares.
No,
that's the only thing is Martin St. Louis might be the guy who can look Mike Matheson and be like, you're on power play 2, bro.
Yeah.
Or maybe they start, Hudson on power play 2 and they switch 20 games into the season. I'm just saying, the path for Hudson there is a competent Montreal
There's
power play.
There's a lot of guys
scoring.
who will sneak in there. I think for right now, it's a comfortable top 3 of saying it's between Cutter, Celebrini, and Mintukov. And then from there on out, there's a bunch of other guys you can look at, and some guys we're not even thinking of right now who will probably jump into that conversation. But
Tristan Luneau.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice if he? We haven't even talked about.
All right, so let's go into the defense with that, Eddie. That is the transition to defense. What does it take for Tristan Luneau to win the Calder? Does he have to beat Brock Faber?
It's the same thing. Yeah, he has to be Brock Faber. It's the same thing you're talking about with Lane Hudson. And the way you become Brock Faber for Tristan Luneau is you have to, and it's not possible, but you have to nail down that top power play in Anaheim, which right now is I think very much up for grabs. I don't think they're going to give it to Cam Fowler unless nobody really nails it down, at least not to start the year.
How is it not Mintukov's job right now? Isn't it?
I think it is Mintukov's job. I think it's Mintukov's job to lose, but I don't think he's set in stone to keep it, because you've got Luneau and you've got Zellweger. We'll get into the logjam, but if Zellweger even starts the year with them, but it's definitely Mintukov's job to lose. If Zellweger's not in the starting 6, Luneau's probably next up. Unless you just opt to give it to Fowler, right? Jackson Lacombe could as well, for sure. And I mean, he has the upside and the head start of playing more games with Anaheim last year, so that's a possibility as well. But it's, again, the fact we're debating these guys shows you how much it is up for grabs. For Luneau, he has to have a Brock Faber type season. And you can't have a significant rookie season from some of the other guys we already talked about, right? You can't have a 70-point season from Mintukov or a 30-goal season from Cutter Gauthier. But if he has that season, does that mean the top pair is Mintukov Luneau, and the second pair is Lacombe Gudas? I mean, he could be paired with Cam Fowler and still do that. I think the big thing for Luneau is he's solidified in the top 4, which right now he is, and he's top power play to have that season. And listen, Brock Faber did that, and he was top power play in Minnesota. Minnesota's power play wasn't that great either. So it's not impossible for Luneau. Like, the Ducks don't have to have a top 10 power play for Luneau to pull that kind of season off. Luneau's not putting up 24 power play points to do that. It doesn't have to be like that. He just has to, score about 25 to 30 at 5-on-5, and then supplement that with 10 to 15 on the power play, and then there you go. You've had a Brock Faber from last year type season. You're in the conversation at least. But yeah, he has to be in that conversation. He's got to be top 3 among defensemen and fairly close at least in rookie scoring. Like, he in that 45 to 50 point mark, and nobody, Lane Hudson can't have 60. He's got to be really close, if not leading that group, to be in that conversation.
What is your? Go. Yeah. Sorry, no, go.
I was just gonna preface it with: is it possible? It's a stretch, but he's certainly talented enough to do so. And nobody saw Brock Faber coming out and having that type of year. We all knew he was talented. He had the pedigree of where he was drafted. But I don't think anybody expected him to come out from playing 2 games the season prior to 47 points in 82 games. So it's a very good blueprint and player to look at to say this is possible for somebody to do that.
What is your ideal top 4 by the end of this year?
Ideal top 4 is Mintukov, Luneau, probably Lacombe, and Gudas. So as it is now, just essentially Mintukov replacing Cam Fowler when he's inevitably traded. And then if I want to go as far as my ideal 6, it's Mintukov, Luneau, Lacombe, Gudas, Zellweger, Dumoulin. That's my ideal finishing point for the top 6. And if I don't know if Dumoulin's an unrestricted free agent, so if he is and you decide to trade him, then throw in Helleson, Warren, Hines, somebody like that. Vakanainen if you want, but I would rather a younger player have taken a step forward on a right-handed defenseman, so a Helleson or Warren to step in there and play with Zellweger on that bottom pair.
It's going to annoy me that Cam Fowler is going to play 40 games for the Ducks this year.
I know. This is when the roster got announced. We both said like the most interesting thing is that they're running 8D, and there's this big logjam. And what are they going to do with Zellweger? Because like all respect to Vakanainen, I like him. I'm fine with him being the 7th guy. The real question mark here is Zellweger right now is number 7 or 8. Where and how are they going to deal with that? Because if Cam Fowler wasn't here right now, perfect situation for all those young players. Like you said, you can run Mintukov, Luneau, you can run Lacombe, Gudas, you can run either Vakanainen, Dumoulin, or Zellweger, Dumoulin, and see how Zellweger does. And if you have to send him down, you can send him down. Right now,
you can run Zellweger, Vakanainen.
Yep. Yeah, you just run into this situation now where Cam Fowler has to hold down the spot. You can't not play him.
Just like him.
And yeah. You technically could not play him, but they're gonna have to play him. And
no, you're right. And he deserves it. He doesn't.
He's
never done anything that he should come out of the fucking lineup. Let's be very clear. Like there's nothing.
Yeah, I don't want him gone because I don't like him, or I don't want him to play or whatever. I think the young players of this 8 deserve to play, and one of them right now looks most likely Zellweger is going to miss out on being able to make the jump now because of Cam Fowler.
Yeah, I think that's right.
That's the thing. Because Dumoulin and Gudas should play for stylistically and having some veteran presence on there. I don't think you should run 5 kids.
Coward.
Yeah, I know for 100%. I can't get behind that.
No, you're 100%. You're absolutely right. I 100% agree with you. I think, I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping Dumoulin unless it's one of those things where you're turning down, a 2nd-round pick or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not adverse to keeping Dumoulin around, right? Yeah. You got did they get the 4th-round pick for Dumoulin? Or did they trade the 4th-round pick for Dumoulin and they got the 4th-round pick for Fabry?
I think it was that, yeah.
Yeah, because they have the 4th from Detroit. I'm
canceled out, essentially, yeah.
Yeah. So, I as far as this defense, by the end of the year, what I want is Mintukov, Lacombe, and Gudis to all be playing over 20 minutes a night.
Yeah.
That's what I want. And, I would like to see Zellweger being given that second power play spot. Um, I think looking at the forward group, you can make an argument for Minchikov on the top power play unit and then Zellweger and Luno both on the second one. Um, Especially since they're not the same hand. Um, Radko Gudas should play 22 minutes a night. Like, I just don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
He's the captain now. He's the best defensive player on the team. Like, you know, Brian Dumoulin seems like he's going to be just fine. I have no problem playing Euro Vakanainen. I like Vakanainen. I think last year he proved he can be a perfectly fine bottom pair defenseman. Um, if they want to move him out because he's a UFA at the end of the year, that's cool. If they want to bring up Hines or Warren or Hellison, there are certainly players down in San Diego who I have no problem seeing what they have for 15, 20 games at the end of the year. Um, I think right now the defense is more questions than answers. I think, understandably so, I think the defense group is probably about a year and a half to probably about 2 to 3 years behind the forward group as far as long-term pieces, projectable long-term pieces under 25 or 24.
Yeah.
But fuck, man, Lacombe looked really good this preseason. If
Yeah.
Killorn said he's been great. Gudis has said he's been good. Like, man, I would really, really love to see him blossom into a really solid two-way second pair guy.
Yeah. The difference for me is the defense group is still exciting, just like the forward group is. But what we talked about and realistic excitement for the forward group with the pedigree of the players, Minchikov is really the only one who has that. Whereas like Luneau is exciting and he's a good young player, but him and Zellweger and even Lacombe don't hold the same draft pedigree and success prior to this that the forward group does, or that Minchikov technically does, right? So they still are very good
That's
young
where losing
players.
Drysdale hurts, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's the biggest loss in the Drysdale thing. And again, it seems to have been the right decision or a reasonable decision based on what Gauthier is. But that is, sorry, and I'll let you keep going. But
No, you're right.
that is absolutely the downside of it is Jamie Drysdale was the other high pedigree defensive player. So
Yeah. Yeah, and there's the hope that one of Zellweger, Luneau, Lacombe can turn into that type of player, like a solid elite top four defenseman. I think they're good bets to try and gamble that on because Zellweger was a prolific player in the WHL and in the AHL. So there's you just the hope is can that translate to the NHL? Luneau was good in junior and he was good in his little stint with Anaheim and with San Diego. I think he played 6 games in San Diego, 7 with Anaheim. So there's some game time you can see and look at and say, okay, this could be a guy. Lacombe was great last year, so yeah, like there's you're hoping one of those guys turns into it. But Minchikov is kind of the headlining piece this year, and he's the big one for me that you want to see it take a step forward. He played just under 19 minutes last year. If he can push that up to 20-21 this year, if he can nail down the top power play spot, he's the guy you look at to take. And the most likely to take a significant step forward, with the outside hope that one or two of the others can surprise and make leaps and bounds to at least I'm not saying take a step to like being a 40 to 50 point defenseman, but you want Luneau and Zellweger and Lacombe to at least prove they should stay in the lineup and that they are capable, solid NHL players at the very least for this year, and that they deserve a spot over Vakanainen or over Dumoulin. And that you don't, that you're not questioning why they're in the lineup and why you're playing them every night, and should you send them down to San Diego, right? Like that's the steps forward I want to see from those guys. So it's a different expectation for them than I would say for what we hope and expect from Pavel Minchikov this year.
yeah, I mean, like we said last year, Pavel Mintukov is the first defenseman that Anaheim's had in a long time who looked like they could be a legitimate league-wide number one defenseman.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of those guys out there. By definition, there are 32 of them. And even then, there are teams where you would say maybe this team's second defenseman is better than some of these teams' first defensemen. So, really what you're saying is we would like a top 20 defenseman.
Yeah.
Pavel Mintukov looks like he is perfectly capable of being that. He looked good enough in his own end. He looked dynamic enough in the offensive end. His skating is a plus. His brain is a plus. His creativity is a plus. His tenacity, his physicality is a plus. He looks like a legitimately 25-minute a night, two-way offensive defenseman.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited.
That
for
rocks.
Pavel
And
Mintukov now.
because he looked like that last year, the expectation for him this year is different. And at this point, I think what you want is for him to take over games when he's on the ice. You would like to leave this season with Pavel Mintukov knowing he can take over any game. He can just decide it's his game. That is what you want to see from him. You can't see it every night. He's too young, teams are too good. But there's absolutely a world where 3 or 4 times this year, if not more, he just decides it's his night. And you just see him dominate a game. That rocks.
I would really, really love to see him solidify and nail down power play 1.
Yeah.
I would love to see him power play 1, Zellweger power play 2, maybe splitting time with Lacombe on power play 2 or Leno and just kind of shifting things around and giving guys opportunity based on play. I'm fine with that for power play 2, just to give the kids some opportunity and minutes there. But I would love nothing more than for there to be no question of a doubt that Mintukov is power play 1 by game 20, game 30. That's what I'm hoping for his progression, and obviously with the talent on the ice that will lead to more points for me. It's 7 power play assists last year, no power play goals. If you push that to 15, 16, 17 power play points, a few power play goals there, that and the same 5-on-5 production as last year, you're getting close to that 40 point range. If he can finish 40 to 50 points, that's an exceptional season from Pavel Mintukov. And I think he, last year, again, not shown, but I think he can be those types of modern-day defensemen who score 10 to 15 goals. I think he's got the talent to do that, the ability to get up ice, and I'd like to see that take a step forward with some more more comfortability. Hopefully, he's added some muscle. He's a little bit more filled out as well, that he can add to that side of his game. Because we saw a few end-to-end rushes in preseason where he almost scored, so he has that ability. We saw it in junior. I'd love to see that that goal-scoring ability and that ability to lead a rush and surprise a lot of teams, take some steps forward this year as well. And if it does, I mean, that's going to add not to his point totals as well. So.
Yeah. He had 24 penalty minutes last year. For me, 10 goals, 50 points, 60 penalty minutes. Mm-hmm. I want him out there. This team isn't good enough that he shouldn't be taking penalties. Mm-hmm. I would like to see more penalty minutes from him. I don't care how stupid it sounds. I want to see him being engaged. I want to see him being frustrated. I want to see him being on the ice so much and being so passionate that he's taking a couple of dumb cross checks. Getting beat by better players and having to grab or trip or something like that. Mm-hmm. I would like to see more more penalty minutes from him.
Level of compete, right? So
yeah, if he hits 10 to 15 power play points, that is a huge plus. And I think that's more in line with what you're saying, right? Where by the end of the year, you hope he's got 10 plus power play assists. For me, more than anything, 10 goals, 50 points, about 60 penalty minutes. Yeah. I would really appreciate that from him.
Yeah, no,
because it's his job to take.
Yeah, and then Lacombe just building on last year, because he's the only other one of the younger players who played a full season in Anaheim last year. And then for Zellweger and Leno, like I said, I don't know what your expectations are for them, but for me, it's just to prove they can play and deserve to play at the NHL level. That's all my expectation. If they go above and beyond that, for Zellweger and Leno, if they go above and beyond that, great. At the bare minimum, prove without a shadow of a doubt that they are NHL level defensemen. That's all I want from them this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's.
Anything
How
more
do
is a
you want to
bonus.
see it from them? Because I don't think I want to see it from them in the same way.
Yeah, for Zellweger, it's to the offensive ability I want to show through. The ability, to lead rushes, to have that confidence, to go out there and not be timid, to just play. And again, it's very hard to say this because it's not junior, but to play some sort of similar style of game to what he played in junior, because that what makes him so dynamic and so good
Yeah.
and so talented. Some version of that with it toned down a little bit for the NHL level. That's what I want to see, and to not just be overpowered, right? The thing that always comes up with him is his size. So for that to not be a visible issue, obviously it's going to become a problem every now and then just because he is smaller than most of these guys. But he's got a low center of gravity. He's like a kind of a heavy kid, like he's a thick kid, right? So it's to see him go out there and not look out of place, and then to show that offensive ability every now and then. That's what I want to see from him. And then Luneau, on the opposite side of things, is to just be a reliable two-way defenseman who occasionally can show some of that flair, some of that talent, but a bit more reserved, and then to just kind of get some all-situation minutes, get maybe some PK 2 minutes, get some power play 2 minutes here and there, and just work his way, because he is really, the only right-handed shot defenseman outside of Radko Gudas, to just prove he deserves that kind of top pair of right-handed side with whether it be Mintukov or Fowler to start and stick around and not look out of place. So kind of similar to both of them, like the main thing is to not look out of place, but then just to play their games in the way they've played up until this point at an effective level in the NHL, whatever that looks like from them, whatever they have to tone down, whatever they have to work on, but to just, there's some guys every year we look at and say, like, this guy shouldn't be playing at the NHL level, but the Ducks don't have a lot of options beyond them. Other guys who are, there's guys in the AHL who definitely aren't ready, and this is the closest thing we have to the guy being ready. I don't want to be questioning these guys by game 30 or 40. I want to look at them and say, yeah, they deserve to be here. We don't need to look at a Hellison or a Hines or a Warren right now. Like, these are the guys that deserve to be here, and those guys can stay and develop their game in the AHL and make a push for the roster next year.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, they are polar opposites.
Yeah.
I want to notice Olin Zellweger, and I want to forget Luneau is out there. I want to just see if Tristan Luneau looks like Cam Fowler at the end of this season. I will be so happy. Just a reasonable two-way games, able to make exits, possessing the puck, making that first pass, those kinds of things. Being able to play link-up play from the point, right? Receive a pass it across the point, know when to pinch, know when to pull back. Just the soft details of being a two-way defenseman, transitional defenseman. That's what I would like to see. I want to notice Olin Zellweger out there. I want to see that attacking mindset. I want to see him leading the rush. I want to see him getting caught up ice and giving up odd number chances the other direction. Because his skating is good enough that he can make up for it in the same way Jamie Drysdale's skating was good enough that he can make up for it. I really want to try. I really would love to see him picking his moments throughout this course of the season and throughout the course of the game of just really pouring it on and just going forwards. If he's going to make it in the NHL, he has to do that. He has to be that guy. And if he is, that's awesome. What I want from Jackson Lacombe is for me to be worried about who I'm going to trade away below him on the depth chart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
want him to look like a number 3 defenseman by the end of the season because I think he has that in him. And I would not have said that prior to last year. I think prior to last year, what I would have said was I think he has an opportunity to be a plus two-way bottom pair defenseman. I think his ceiling is much higher than that now. And I think the way he's looked in the preseason, is a testament to that and highlights that. He looks like he can be a player, like he can be a potential difference maker from time to time. And if nothing else, a very reliable guy at 5-on-5 in all situations. So, yeah, I think for me that's it. And then Radko, I just want to see be Radko. I'm not worried about him.
No. Yeah, him, Dumoulin, the veteran guys, and even Cam to start the year is they just need to be and do what we expect of them. They're at that.
I would
point in
love
their
to see
careers,
Cam
right?
score 10 goals in two games. Like I just
so we
get
can
us
up the
those
trade
first round
value
picks,
a little
bud.
bit.
Get us
So
those picks.
when I was gonna talk about this after, but we might as well. When do you expect him to get traded? When do you hope he gets traded? What do you think of that situation right now? Because it seems like it's something that at some point this year it's bound to happen. But when do you hope it's going to happen? When do you expect it to happen?
I think it probably will end up happening around the deadline. I hope it happens before November. Or before December.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see it get taken care of in early to middle November. If somebody wants to do it in October, I'm not going to stop them. But I think realistically, teams are still trying to ask too many questions about themselves.
Yeah.
But middle of November, I would really like to see this get solved.
I think it's one of those things that the teams that are interested in him know he's available, and it's a matter of time before they figure out their rosters. So like you said, you get the first month and a half under your belt, figure out who deserves to stay here, who doesn't, what do we need, any injuries that come up, whatever. I think the teams that, again, are interested, know he's available, have that in the back of their mind that this is something we can reignite and come back to if we need to. So my hope is the same as yours. I hope it's a mid to late November, early December thing before Christmas that we see it get finalized and done with. That's partially my expectation too. Like I really hope it's done before the deadline. I don't want to see it drag out that long to the point that it becomes a deadline acquisition for a team. I want to see it get dealt with before the 30 game mark and to just have for the remaining 2/3 of the season an understanding of who we're moving forward with on that blue line with likely no other guys moving out unless it's like Dumoulin at the deadline, which again, like we said, there's an easy transition there. You move Dumoulin out, you hope that one of Hellison, Warren, Hines, whatever are doing better in the AHL, you can bring them up, or you just go and make another lateral move and take on somebody's salary dump at the deadline for a draft pick and add a veteran to your blue line. Like it's easy to replace Dumoulin if you need to, whether it's from within or from somewhere else. Cam is a little bit different, where it has a little bit more of an immediate impact on the roster. So,
well, I mean, look, I don't think Dumoulin plays 60 games for Anaheim this year,
no,
and I don't think he plays a game for them next year. That being said, like I said, if he stuck around this year, it wouldn't bother me. I just hope they don't re-sign him because they have guys that, they're going to be able to give those jobs to. The thing about the Cam stuff that is interesting is he has a $6.5 million cap hit. Not only does he have a $6.5 million cap hit, but Anaheim is only about 2.5 above the cap floor, or the salary floor.
You can only eat so much off that, yeah.
So, well, you can only eat 50% of the Cam deal, and if you did, that would help you in what salary you need to take back, but you have to add salary in almost any deal. And the number of teams that have salary that isn't long-term committed is going to be very interesting. One of the things, that I said to you was like, would you do a Cam for Pierre Engvall deal? Pierre Engvall makes $3 million for another 6 years. That's not nothing. That's a serious contract to take on. But the lack of cap space in this league right now, like, I don't think it should be ruled out that Cam doesn't get traded until the draft. There's a world where he plays the whole year in Anaheim.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's not a UFA at the end of the season. Anaheim is If other teams can't afford it or Anaheim isn't willing to do what it takes, there's a world where he plays the whole year in Anaheim. I think that's a mistake. But if Zellweger doesn't look ready, maybe it's less of an issue.
Yeah, I want a resolution to this as soon as possible, but I don't think we're going to get one until at the very earliest mid-November, early December, just because, again, teams figuring out their rosters, and it is one, like you said, that can very easily push to the deadline or push to the draft, because the Ducks aren't going to move him unless they get what they think he's worth. And it's tougher to move
Which
him
is
because
what,
of...
by the way? What is
I don't
he
even
worth,
know
Eddy?
at this point. You would hope it's a first-round pick. I don't know. It's just a very tricky one to judge because he's going to be worth more to some teams than others depending on their situation. And
Hey, let me ask it this way.
I think Cam Fowler 50% retained is worth at least a first-round pick and like a B-level prospect.
What if you don't retain anything? What if it's Cam Fowler at full freight? Is that a second-round pick?
Yeah, and maybe a roster player to help offset some of the cap. Like that's what you're getting at that point. So
I genuinely, and like I say this as someone who spends more than their fair share of free time, and frankly a shameless amount, if we're being completely honest, a truly sickening amount of their free time, and non-free time, thinking of these stupid trades, and I have absolutely no idea what Cam Fowler should be worth in a trade. I don't know what to do. Like,
yeah,
because I also know that my opinion of him and the NHL's opinion of him are not the same. The way I've seen some of the insiders talk about it, like he's leading the trade board on Bleacher Report right now.
yeah,
You know, Frank Saravalli in that article that got him in trouble today because he's a fucking moron.
yeah.
We don't even need to go into that. He's a fucking
Yeah.
moron.
Yeah, well, we know that. Yeah,
But he was like, he should be one of the hottest names, I think also with Yanni Gord and someone else at the
Yeah.
trade deadline. Look, as full of shit as he has a general level of access to the conversation that we do not, and it is worth taking into consideration from a broad perspective. He would know if a player like Cam Fowler has a popular enough or high enough perception around the league to be worth something at the deadline. I have no fucking clue what Cam Fowler is worth because I have a hard time getting past I don't think he's worth his cap hit, which means he is, again, gross language, a distressed asset.
Mhm.
If you retain half his salary, I think he's worth a first-round pick because I think what you're looking at is a situation similar to what Chicago did with Jake McCabe in sending him to Toronto. They retained it. He became a super cheap player. Cam Fowler at $3.25 a year is a remarkable deal.
Yeah.
I think Cam Fowler is probably a $5 million a year player.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit more if you want to say, given the cap and his ability to play
And
20 minutes a
situation
night.
he walks into, yeah.
So, I don't really have an issue with saying, if they eat the salary, and I have no problem. I think Cam, again, for me, retaining salary is far more about, especially at least when it hurts, is about if the player has earned the opportunity. And again, Cam Fowler is just like John Gibson to me. They have both earned the opportunity that Anaheim should be willing to retain salary. Cam Fowler at $3.25 is a great player who has a lot of teams interested around the league, and he probably gets to pick where he goes.
Yeah.
But that is the other part of this, I suppose, that we haven't talked about yet, is because of his 14 no trade clause, he has said that he's willing to open it up. What does that do for his value?
Yeah, and what does opening it up mean? 2 teams, 5 teams, 10 teams, right? Like,
Right.
It still limits where you can go to. It extends the timeline because if all those, if there's 6 teams that he's willing to go to, and none of those teams end up developing a need for a defenseman like him, then there's no market for him. So it creates some interesting possibilities and conflicts for moving him. The one thing before we move on to the goalies I want to touch about, because we're talking about trades, the Ducks are limited that, like, if we are more than likely expecting Cam Fowler to be the one that gets traded at Anaheim because of how close they are to the cap floor, and if you are retaining or not on Cam Fowler, it limits the ability to move other guys out. Most notably John Gibson, and if you're going to move him out or not. You've got some unrestricted free agents. We already mentioned Brian Dumoulin making 3.15. You can't just dump that, right? Like it's not an easy situation for the Ducks to just dump that and get a pick back. You can't just dump Robbie Fabry's $4 million and not bring any salary back. Same for Brock McGinn. Frank Vetrano, I think, unless the team's awful and somebody's offering you the moon for him, I think he's a guy they'd like to keep, and they'll probably work on an extension with him. But he's an unrestricted free agent, so you could see that potential. But I think this could be a situation where, barring the Ducks bringing on any significant cap, Cam Fowler might be the only move out of the team for the entire season.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think that should be ignored. I'll tell you what, though, Edward. You know who makes $10.5 million a year next year? And this year?
Sergei Bobrovsky?
Carey Price.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah, no, I know.
Cam. Shea Weber is like 7.8 for another 2 years. Like, I really wonder if we see Anaheim go out and LTIR shop. There are certainly teams that would be willing to make those things happen.
I think they have to if they want to try and get some value from these rentals in Fabry and Dumoulin, which they've shown in the past they like to rent these guys for a year and get assets for them. I don't think Pat Verbeek's, whether the Ducks are in a spot for a playoff spot or not, are going to necessarily want to grab these guys and lose them for nothing. So
why is Cal Peterson not on Anaheim?
Yeah, I think it could be a situation where Cam Fowler's the first situation you handle and you move out, and then from there, if you're thinking you want to move other guys out the door, the next move from there is adding salary cap in some sort of deal like that, right? Where you bring on a hefty contract from another team and you get a draft pick in compensation to do so, and then that awards you more flexibility to move a Robbie Fabry, to move a Brian Dumoulin, move a Frank Vetrano if you really wanted to, right? Or move a John Gibson. Like, it gives you that flexibility to do that now that you've brought in some of that cap space to eat up the space you need to get to the floor.
I guess they're going to have to trade for a bad contract. They should go get Mitch Marner.
Yeah, that's the one we're still waiting on. We don't know, though. Don't know if that's going to pan out or not. We'll see. But that's a situation. I don't know how that's going to go. I still don't see him back in Toronto, but...
Anaheim should go get Nicholas Backstrom in his $9.2 million contract.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That's possible. Goalies. We touched John Gibson a bit, other than the fact that he's injured, whether he gets moved or not. It is what it is. I don't want to spend too much time on John Gibson, honestly. I'm more interested in talking about Lucas Dostal and what to expect from him this year. We know, and we've mentioned, James Reimer claimed off waivers, is going to be the backup to start the year. But the big topic, big discussion, and everything for the Ducks this year is Lucas Dostal, with the John Gibson injury situation, awarded the ability to be the starter for at least the first couple weeks of the season. How important is that for his development for the Ducks, and how important, obviously, is it for him to get off to a really good start?
I don't know that anybody has ever had as fortuitous a appendix rupture as John Gibson did for the Ducks. Him being out for what is now listed as 1 to 4 weeks is honestly a great thing to happen to Anaheim, because it gives them the opportunity to hand the reins to Lucas Dostal under the cover of player health and see what he does with it. I would not be surprised if John Gibson maybe stayed out a couple of days, depending on when he's healthy, longer than maybe it takes him to heal within that 1 to 4. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be out for 6 weeks. What I'm saying is, like, if he's at 3 weeks and he can come back, maybe they keep him out for an extra day or two for one reason or another. Allow his body to recover and things like that. I mean, Lucas Dostal has an opportunity here to firmly establish himself as the Anaheim Ducks goalie of the next 10 years, or at least the next 5-6 years. I don't know what else to say.
he's deservedly worked himself into, at the very least, a split. Because he played 44 games. I'm not counting games started, just games he's played in last year. He played 44. John Gibson played 46. And he outperformed him. He had one more win. He had a higher save percentage and a higher goals against average. Lucas Dasso was the better netminder for John in Anaheim last year. And it's not a games played issue. It's not like John Gibson played double the amount of games. So at the very least, he's earned himself a split. And like you said, the fact that John Gibson is injured to start the season or out to start the season is very, very fortuitous for Lucas Dasso to just take the reins immediately and prove he's the starter. It's a decent schedule to start. There's some games you should win. There's some tough matchups to prove yourself in. We've seen his workload get ramped up to the end of the last season. We speculated then that like they're starting to move in this direction where it looks like Lucas Dostal is going to be the starter to start next year. And now, obviously, again, the Gibson situation awards him that ability. It's so important for him to get off to a good start here and prove he could be the guy. And again, like this is the first time in a long time, or maybe ever for the Ducks, where you've had this much excitement of young players and potential in the forward group, this much excitement around young players and their potential for the defense, and then a starting netminder who's young and has potential to be a starter, who's going to be a starter to start the year. Like all these things coming to a head at to start the season. There's excitement at every level, right? There's no going into it saying like, oh, we're running 5 veterans on the blue line, there's one exciting young player, right? Like it's potential for growth in every area, which makes it very exciting, very risky, very nerve-wracking all at the same time. But it boils down to what will be a very, very interesting start to look at all positions for the Ducks to start the year.
Yeah, 100%. I you said it pretty perfectly. Like the roster as a whole is the most interesting it's been in years. There's an opportunity to see the future in everything, and there's enough players. At least there's 2 players, I guess is the right way to say it. But because Gibson and Fowler are still on this roster, they provide a perfect kind of tie to the last generation and the last,
Mm-hmm.
version of this team, and so to have them kind of around as this team makes that transition is really interesting. It creates a cool dynamic in terms of storytelling. I think that's the thing for me. As we're talking about this, I keep using words like narrative and storytelling and things like that, and I think that's what it is. I think this year is, you want to see growth on the standings, right? You want to see this team move up and be in that drafting 9, 10, 12 range, take that leap into being a Buffalo like last year. But I also think there is so many different things here. There's so many interesting things here that Anaheim doesn't have to solely look at the standings or even really the stats to find reasons to be optimistic here for Anaheim. I think by and large you would certainly prefer to be able to point to players growing and producing at a higher level than before, and more wins and things like that. But again, like we talked about, there's a very easy argument to be made about what all these guys are and what they can be, and having a guy at every position, like you said, just really highlights that. So I don't know, I'm getting kind of, I guess, esoteric or extemporaneous about the team as a whole, but like it's just a really interesting time. Like this is again like the most excited I've been about a season in a while, and I think what terrifies me the most is that excitement seems really justified.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, bring on October 12th. At this point, I'm ready to just either be justified in my excitement or completely heartbroken and disappointed to how
It's
these
a long
first couple
season. We'll
games
get
go.
both.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We for sure will. But it's been very, like, we've asked for, at the very least, just some moments of excitement. It's been very void of that over the last couple of years, where it's just been long stretches of bad, and really not too many sprinkles of good. Like last year, there's like a few moments, like the Carlsson hat trick, and this, and a few moments here and there, but not enough to sustain you over like losing 10 games in a row, right? So.
Right.
I need at least a close to a 50-50 split this year at the bare minimum of good and bad to feel good about it. And then hopefully, I mean, yeah, again, like we mentioned many times, there's the potential for things to go very well um, for the Ducks this year. Honestly, I think I don't have much else to cover beyond, like, the Ducks own their own first round pick, so if things do go bad this year, top end of the draft, maybe you look for a right-handed defenseman. I think that's all the Ducks really need, but that's a conversation for a later date, because we're being optimistic right now that pick is going to be 16 to 32 and not in the top 15. Anything we missed? Anything you want to cover before we wrap it up?
Okay, so I have a way we're gonna wrap this up, but before we get to that, I want to ask you this. On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for the year ahead? Not optimistic, just excited. Just glad that hockey's back.
I think a 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm right there with you, man. I'm so excited. I really cannot remember the last time that I was this excited going into a year. And again, like I said, that's somewhat terrifying, but that is such a fun feeling to have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I have a 35% shot at having that excitement validated by this team.
Yep. Which is better than it has been. So.
All right, so here is what we are going to do. I want to ask you, Eddy, who do you think leads the team in goals when all is said at the end of the year?
I think it's still. No. I want to say I think it's still going to be for Toronto, but if he's not playing. There's a world where he doesn't stay on top power play. So that's the thing for me. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to say it's. I'm just going to say it's Troy Terry. I'm going to say it's Troy Terry.
You're going to say Terry?
Yeah.
All right, Terry. How many goals do you think he gets?
32.
32. All right, I will say.
I think there's guys that are close to it. I don't think he's
I will say
far 32.
McTavish at 35.
I love it.
35.
I chickened out of saying Cutter Gauthier for that. So.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Yeah.
Who leads the team in assists?
Trevor Zegras.
Zegras?
Mm-hmm.
How many?
53.
Fucking go. And leads the team in assists. I will say. Ooh. Fuck it. I'll say Mintukov. Because I don't want to go with you. I want to bet against you. I'll say Mintukov with 45.
Love it.
All right. Who leads the team in points?
Trevor Zegras.
Zegras?
Mm-hmm.
What does he hit? What's the round number he passes?
78. So above 75.
75?
Yeah.
So you think he's going to have 78 points?
Mm-hmm. 25 goals, 53 assists.
Incredible. All right, and I will say it is shit. You said Zegras.
You can say him.
I'm gonna say Zegras.
It just feels like the right if it's not Terry, it just feels like he's the next logical one to do it. I mean, the funnest answer would be Leo Carlsson.
And I am going to say he gets to 80 points.
So you didn't have him leading in assists. How many goals is he going to have?
So if he has 34 goals and 46 assists, so he has to win goals or assists. I'm betting against myself here.
No, that's fair. That's fine.
There's really no way for him to not lead the team in goals or assists and get to 80 points.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's literally impossible. Unless somebody else does
something
something insane.
Yeah, Carter scores 40.
Yeah, it would take a Chris Kreider, 40 and 20 year for that to...
I love it.
So, all right.
We're not optimistic at all.
How many wins does Lucas Dostal have at the end of the year?
Oh boy, I still think John Gibson's gonna be here. I think the team. I think Dostal might play 50 games, and the rest are split between like Reimer early on and John Gibson. So if I say the Ducks are gonna win, maybe around 39 to 41 games. So 26.
You say 26 wins?
Yeah.
6. I'm going to say 15.
Shit.
All right. Let's see. We got goals, assists, points. Who leads the team in penalty minutes?
Oh, Radko.
You're going to say Gudis?
Mm-hmm.
I am going to say McTavish.
Who was it last year? Was it Radko last year?
Let me check.
I know it's Pims went.
Yeah, it was Radko 128, Ross Johnson 117, Carrick 90, and then McTavish at 86.
Yeah, he could get there for sure.
My boy's got it in him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Eddie. What is the best case scenario win total for this team? Shootouts, overtime, all of it counts.
Best case wins?
Yeah, best case wins.
Familiar myself with last year's.
I'll go first this time.
Yeah, go for it.
I will say it is 42.
Yeah, I'm 41. That's mine. So.
What is the worst case loss scenario?
$40?
You're going to say 40?
Yeah. Just winning 10 more games than last year, basically. Because they had 50 losses last year. Are we counting OT losses in that?
Yeah. But this is the most losses this team will have could possibly have next season.
Yeah. But like we counting OT.
You think
so
the
they had
worst
55,
season they could have is 40 losses?
They had 55 last year, including OT losses. So we're counting OT losses in that?
Yeah, everything.
Okay. For 43 then.
Okay.
I mean, they're at least winning 39 games. I'm not leaving myself a lot of leeway there. But.
All right. For me, it's 50. There's a world where they go 32, 40, and 10. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or even 35 and 15. But Eddie, do they make the playoffs?
No. Unfortunately not, no. There's too many good teams above them. I think they're in it for, a little bit, maybe December, January, but I don't think beyond that.
All right. I'm going to say no as well. Do they pick in the bottom 5?
No.
Bottom 5?
And barring
Eddy.
We're not counting lottery wins. Just are they positioned before the lottery in the bottom?
Yeah.
No.
Standings, straight league standings. No. I'm gonna say yes, just for the sake of it. but I will say that they are the 5th team. Well, my friend, we've got 82 games to be miserable ahead of us.
Or
And
be
theoretically,
completely
some of those games
ecstatic.
we could be really excited about, but like, let's be honest.
Hoping more games than last year. Yeah, man, I don't know, man. I'm pumped. I'm pumped, and we'll see how long, if at all, the tires get deflated. But yeah, I don't feel like I'm repeating myself more times than not on this show. But the most excited I've been in a while to watch this team, to watch this roster, the way it's constructed, go out there. So a lot of optimism. Really excited about it. We kick off Saturday the 12th against San Jose, then back-to-back against the Sharks against the Golden Knights on the 13th, Utah on the 16th, and Colorado on the 18th, I think, are the first 4 games.
Yeah.
We'll wrap it up with this then. Record after those first 4.
I'll say 2-1-1.
That's what I'm going to. So
I was going to go 1-2-1, but I'm choosing to be optimistic.
Yeah, I'll go. I'll just go 2-0-2 to be different.
Ooh, I like it.
No regulation losses.
Is Greg Cronin still the coach at the end of the year?
I mean, I have to say, based off my predictions are, yeah, he is. There'll be enough improvement. I don't want to go against everything I've said that will happen. So
they just win the last 25 games straight after firing the coach.
Hey, man, it's a St. Louis type situation. They hire a new coach in December, and they win like 25 of their last 30 games and make a run to the Stanley Cup.
God, insane. Absolutely fucking insane. Yeah. It's going to be a good season. It's going to be fun. I can't wait to be pissed off about something stupid.
I am sort of glad we get to like ease into it and see a few days of other teams playing before I get subjected to it, just to kind of get myself back into the mix of things. So, yeah, it will be nice, and I'm kind of happy we get a little back to start, a little double dose. Whether it's good or bad, just to either, if it's bad against San Jose, a chance to redeem things fairly quickly, or if it's good against San Jose, maybe a little double hit. So we'll see. Excited.
All right, quick.
Yeah.
Last thing we do, and then we're just going to shut it.
Yeah.
Who wins the Jack Adams?
Sheldon Keefe.
You say Sheldon Keefe? Oh, that's a good answer. I'm going to go Travis Green. Keefe. Green, even though I do not think it'll be Travis Green. Who wins the Vezina?
Shesterkin.
You say Shesterkin? I will take Markstrom.
It's funny.
Who
I
wins
said
the
Sheldon Keefe, but I should probably pick Markstrom, but I think it's more other guys. Okay, anyway, sorry.
Who wins the Norris this year?
Oh. It's still only between a handful of guys.
I'm gonna say Fox.
It's fair, yeah. I'll just say Makar comes back, stays healthy, wins it.
Fucking Canadian sellout. Who wins the Selke this year? I'm taking Matthews.
Yeah, I'll go Matthews too. Yeah, I want to say Barkov double down, but I feel like they'll sour on it a little bit if Florida isn't as good as they were.
Who wins the Hart?
My boy Jack Hughes wins the Hart this year.
Oh, he stole him. Who wins the Hart? You know what? I'll take Makar for the Hart.
I like it.
All right. Let's get the fuck out of here.
No Rocket? Or did you just know it's Matthews?
Oh, I didn't even think about the Rocket. I just did the big award for every position. Rocket. Okay. You know what? Fuck this. Let's be homers. I'm taking Cole Caulfield. Give me the American boy.
I'm not going to take Matthews either, just because it's a cop-out. I'm going to take Pasternak.
Oh, Paster's a good one.
Caulfield is wild.
Pasta
I
wins
love
the
it.
Rocket. If Pasta wins the Rocket, he probably
So
wins
does
the Heart.
Yeah. So,
He's so
whatever.
fucking good, dude.
And yeah, we know McDavid's gonna win
Oh,
the Hart
Kachuk
Ross.
winning the Rocket would be.
That would be nice.
Oh my God, could you imagine? Could you imagine Brady Kachuk winning the Rocket with like 60 goals?
Timo Meyer for the Rocket. Playing with Hart Trophy Jack Hughes. Maybe.
Yo, that is the case right there,
Yeah.
right? 120 season,
Yeah.
120 point season from Jack Hughes and like 65 goals
Yeah.
for fucking Timo Meyer.
That's it, man.
And it's just like, oh yeah, Jack Hughes assisted primarily on like 40 of them.
I wonder how much I could win putting 20 on Jack Hughes. A parlay of Jack Hughes for the Jack Hughes over 120 points. Jack Hughes for the Hart. Timo Meyer over 60 goals. Timo Meyer for the Rocket Richard.
Jesus,
20
dude, you could get like a billion one. You could make
20
$1 billion
turned
on
into
that
a
bet.
couple, what, 10, 20,000 maybe?
You would, dude. That would turn into like 100 grand at least. A $20 bet with that particular parlay of those 5 things, dude. That's
I'll just throw Sheldon Keefe as the
you would retire.
the Jack
You would
Adams
retire.
into that. Might as well just all in on New Jersey.
You would. That's what you got to do is just do $20
Yeah,
on
everything New
one
Jersey.
player from Jersey to do everything.
Jack Hughes Hart,
Like-
Jack Hughes over 100, 120 points. Meyer over 60 goals. Meyer, Rock Richard, Sheldon Keefe, Jack Adams. New Jersey President's Trophy.
Okay, so like I hate gambling. It's stupid, but I
I-
enjoy doing it. I wonder like if you just did position like separately, right? But you did Jack Hughes Hart, Jack Hughes 120 point parlay. Then you did like Nico Heischer, Selke, Nico Heischer 70 point parlay. Then it's like Dougie Hamilton Norris, Dougie Hamilton, 60 point parlay. Fucking Jacob Markstrom, Vezina, Jacob Markstrom
40 plus wins.
30 win parlay. Like dude, that would be so funny.
Some New Jersey fan out there might have already done all this.
That would blow $100 because none of those would hit. But God, it would rock. I want it for Jackie so bad. If he wins the Hart this year, that would rock.
My most confident would be Hughes and Meyer doing that.
I should have taken Crosby instead of McCarr. If they make the playoffs, Crosby gets it.
Crosby's wild. Yeah, you'd have to drag that team to do anything. All right.
They're going to trade Marcus Pettersson. Look, we're doing the thing we said we
we're
weren't going to do.
doing. Okay. Well, at least we're talking about hockey this time, not like movies or shows or anything.
Thank God for that.
Yeah. All
Small
right.
miracles.
Appreciate you guys coming out. Hopefully, I know I'll make a point, but hopefully you are listening to this before the season starts. So, the first show, if you listen to it or not, that will be out. Will be the Atlantic and Pacific Division preview, and then this one will come out. I'll probably release them like very shortly after each other, maybe a day. And then we'll be back. Yeah.
Shit!
What?
I told Chad I would shout it out from the Anaheim Calling. Anna ANACALLING _ FHF. That's on Twitter. At ANACALLING _ FHF. Chad is going to be putting out a betting sheet every week for the Ducks with a bunch of silly over and unders.
Oh, nice.
It's just a lot of fun. It's a Google Doc. Find it, put in your answers. It's a lot of fun. Me and Chad are really excited about it. It should be a good time, and Chad's putting in the effort and the work. So show him the love and appreciation that he deserves. Find the tweet and fill that out for him. Okay, sorry. I promised him I would say something, and if I
love it.
didn't, I was going to be pissed. So
We got something important at the end. Finally.
there you go.
That will be it. We'll see you guys after probably the first handful of games, and hopefully we're speaking good things, and we're coming into it optimistic and not completely heartbroken and deflated.
Yeah.
So
That's the best case scenario.
we'll see. All right. Appreciate you guys coming out. Take care. We'll talk soon.
Bye, everybody.